boys and girls. I want to say sorry in advance today because it is cloudy and dark and I have trouble feeling wide awake when it's like this. Even though it's daytime, it kind of feels like it could be bedtime to me. So if I yawn, I'm sorry. Did you know that a lot of times when people yawn, it makes the people around them yawn too? That's called contagious. And it's kind of like if you have a cold and you give someone else a cold, yawns can be like that. So if you yawn, then I'm sorry. But it's gonna be a good day anyway. Look, I have a new ukulele. It kind of looks like my old ukulele, doesn't it? But it's a little bit bigger and it's got some more strings on it. And it plays songs a little bit lower, like when Grandpa sings and his voice is down deep sometimes. It's not quite that low, but I am eager to show it to you when we sing together. And I've got some good stories today because you know, days like today when it's just raining and yucky and you can't go outside and play, those are good days for doing things like helping mom or dad cook in the kitchen, right? Make things and just do some fun indoor activities. And so I've got some stories about making things. And I hope you like them. Let's get started. What do you say? Here we are together again, let's clap and make some noise. It's time to share some stories and friends with all the girls and boys. So come and gather all around and then we will begin to open up our listening ears. It's story time again. Here we go. Our first story today is called The Blue Coat. And it's a folktale like a lot of the other stories we tell, and so maybe you've heard other versions of it. But it's basically comes down to a coat. It's a very special coat. It's not special because it's expensive or because it's made from the finest materials or even because it's a very old, famous coat worn by a king or a prince. This coat is special. This coat was special because it was made for a little boy named David by his grandfather. Because his grandfather had only one grandson named David, it was the only coat like it in the whole world, and David loved it. It was a bright blue coat, and David loved the way it made him stand out, made him bright against the green grass when he went outside to play and against the green trees. And his mom said when she looked out the window, she could always see David, no matter how far away from the house he was playing. And it was warm and had a soft lining inside, and it felt so good on his arms and his body. But do you know what little boys named David do? They grow. I bet you're not the same size that you were when you were just little, right? And so David grew. And the coat that had fit so perfectly when David's grandfather made it for him started to not fit so much. The sleeves started creeping up on his arms, and the buttons got tight around his middle. And he was very sad because he didn't want to stop wearing his coat. And so his grandfather said, I can make something from this. And so he took the coat and he cut it and he made it a lighter jacket. So it didn't come down so far on him, and he added some little bits to the ends to make the sleeves a little bit longer, and it would fit him just for a little longer. And David loved his coat. But he kept growing. He grew and he grew, and now the sleeves just weren't going to fit at all, were they? And no matter how much he changed the length of the coat, it was still going to be just not good. It was not going to fit David's body anymore. And he was sad. But Grandpa looked at the coat and said, I can make something of that. And he took the coat and he started cutting. He cut and he cut, and he had enough fabric to make David a hat. Oh, it was a pretty hat. Bright blue, just like David liked it, and floppy on the end, so it flopped down over one of his ears. And it was so soft still, and David loved his hat, and he wore it all the time, everywhere he went. And everyone who saw that floppy blue hat said, "Here comes David." They knew. But time started to pass, and it had been a long time since Grandpa had made that original coat. So the fabric was starting to get a little worn. It was starting to get old. Even though David took very good care of it, never dropped it in the dirt, and always hung it up when he got home rather than dropping it on the floor, it still was starting to look old. The ends were starting to fray, and there were some patches that it just looked like it was going to get a hole. And so David's grandpa looked at the hat and said, "Well, I can make something of that." And so he took the hat and he started cutting again. And he cut until he made him a handkerchief. And David kept the handkerchief in his pocket, and he used it to wipe dirt and sweat off his face when he played hard outside. And sometimes he used it to put little rocks and leaves in when he found them outside and wanted to bring them home safely. And he used it all the time. And it got older too, older and older, until really it was not much good for a handkerchief anymore. And David was afraid he was going to have to throw it away finally. But his grandpa said, "I can make something of that." And so he took the handkerchief and he cut and cut until there was just a small piece of fabric left. And then he stitched and stitched, and he turned it into a special cloth button. It was so tiny. That button was so small compared to the coat that it had come from a long time ago. And then David's grandpa gave him a new coat on which he sewed the button. And David was so surprised. He was so happy. And David said, "I didn't think that we were going to be able to save anything of the old coat." And Grandpa said, "Well, we can always save at least enough to make a good story." The end. What are some other things we could make other than sewing or doing crafts with paper or tape and glue and scissors? One of the things that we can make, especially on days when maybe it feels a little cold because it's wet outside, one of the things we can do is bake. We can make things in the kitchen. That's fun. So we're going to do a finger play about some things we could make with apples. Because I bet you have maybe some apples around in your house, and I don't want to make you hungry for something that you don't have. But these apples in our rhyme are going to be just pretend, all right? We're going to talk about making apple bread, our first part of our rhyme. So if you've got a scarf or a blanket or a towel, or you can just pretend with your hands, that'll be fine. Here we go. First, we're going to start kneading our dough. Apple, apple, apple bread. Apple, apple, apple head. Apple, apple, apple pie. Pretend you're holding one up in your hand. Apple, apple, apple eye. Or you can just go like this. Apple, apple, apple cake. Tall cake. Apple, apple, apple shake. Apple, apple, apple sauce. Apple, apple, apple toss. Let's do that again, all right? Apple, apple, apple bread. Apple, apple, apple head. Apple, apple, apple pie. Apple, apple, apple eye. Apple, apple, apple cake. Apple, apple, apple shake. Apple, apple, apple sauce. Apple, apple, apple toss. Have you ever made bread? And I don't mean in a bread machine, although that's fun too, and it really, really smells and tastes good, doesn't it? Fresh bread is wonderful. But I'm talking about making bread from scratch. Putting the flour together with the milk and the salt and the baking powder and just kneading it in a big loaf, big roll of dough, and pushing it and kneading it with your hands over and over. It's a lot of work. It's worth it. Sometime, if you haven't done it, you should ask a grown-up and see if they'll make bread with you. It's fun. Well, this is the story of the little red hen. And in this story, the little red hen had a family of chicks that were very hungry, and she decided they were going to make some bread. You see, one day, when she was scratching for worms, her chicks found some seeds on the ground. They were wheat seeds. Did you know that every plant pretty much comes from a seed of some kind? And she wondered what to do with these wheat seeds. And her friends around her, the pig, said, you could plant them and grow wheat. And the cat said, you could use that wheat and make some flour after that. And the duck said, and then you could take that flour and use it to make bread. Oh, little red hen thought that was a great idea. So she gathered up as many of the seeds as she could find, and she said, now, who will help me plant the wheat seeds? And the pig yawned. And he said, not I. And the cat stretched and said, not I. And the duck paddled lazily around in the water and said, not I. And the little red hen said, fine, my chicks and I will do it ourselves. And so they spent all afternoon planting the wheat seeds, watering them and making sure they were just the right place in the sun to grow up tall and strong and good. And they did. The little red hen and her chicks took very good care of the wheat plants, and eventually they grew really tall and were just full of wheat. And she said, now, who will help me harvest the wheat? The pig, if you can believe it, was napping yet again. So he just opened one eye and said, not I. And the cat, who was lying in a patch of warm sun, said, not I either. The duck was nestled in its little nest next to the pond. Didn't feel like getting up either, so he said, quack, not I. The little red hen said, fine, my chicks and I will do it ourselves. And so they spent a long, hard day harvesting all the wheat. And then they had to harvest the next day too. It took a long time for a hen and some chicks to harvest wheat. It's a big job, but eventually they did. And then they had to grind the wheat. They had to grind it into a powder to get the flour. And the red hen said, who will help me? Can you take a guess? The pig yawned and said, not I. And the cat blinked slowly and said, not I. And the duck said, quack, not I. And so the little red hen and her chicks found themselves once again working by themselves. They took the flour that they made and they mixed it with the milk and the salt and all the other ingredients to make bread. And they worked very hard to make the bread. But when it was in the oven, oh, the smells that came out of her house were so good. And the pig suddenly found the energy to get up off the ground and stretch and wander his way over to Little Red Hen's house. The cat dragged itself out of its warm, sunny, comfortable spot and made its way to Little Red Hen's house. And sure enough, here came the duck, waddling up the path all the way to Little Red Hen's house as she took the loaf out of the oven. And all the chicks started jumping around in excitement because it looked so delicious. And the Little Red Hen said, now, who will help me eat this bread? And the pig said, I will. And the cat said, oh, I will. And the duck said, I will. And the Little Red Hen laughed, a little short laugh. Ha! And she said, you weren't here to help me plant the wheat, and you weren't here to help me harvest it, and you weren't here to help me make the flour, and you weren't around when I needed help making the bread, so no, My chicks and I will eat the bread all by ourselves. And that's what they did. All right, we're gonna do a song that's kind of like the Little Red Hen's story. And it's called The Garden Song. It's gonna talk about making a garden and growing plants that make food that you can take into your house and cook and eat. I'm gonna play the music, but I want you to get up and act it out. Digging in your garden and using a shovel and planting the seeds. You can pretend, right? Here we go. Dig, dig, dig your garden, make it smooth and neat. Push, push, push the shovel, push it with your feet. Do that part again. Dig, dig, dig your garden, make it smooth and neat. Push, push, push the shovel, push it with your feet. Plant, plant, plant your seeds, push them down an inch. Cover your seeds with some oil, cover with a pinch. Plant, plant, plant your seeds, push them down an inch. Cover your seeds with some soil, cover with a pinch. Water, water, water your seeds, this will help them sprout. Sprinkle lightly, let's not pour, and don't let them dry out. Water, water, water your seeds, this will help them sprout. Sprinkle lightly, let's not pour, and do not let them dry out. Sun, sun, sunshine, it will turn them green. Carrots, radishes, peppers too. Tomatoes and some beans. Sun, sun, sunshine too. It will turn them green. Carrots, radishes, peppers too. How about some corn? Corn and then some beans. Watch, watch, watch them grow. See them grow so tall. Put a scarecrow in the ground to protect them all. Pull, pull, pull the weeds, keep your garden clear. Make them grow up and out, stretch out here and there. That doesn't rhyme. Pull, pull, pull the weeds, keep your garden clear. To make them grow up and out. Can I make it rhyme? And stretch out there and here. Pick, pick, pick your feast, cook some veggie soup. You'll have lots and lots to eat, enough to feed a group. As long as they helped you make your garden. You can be generous, I think. Well, I hope that you enjoyed our story time today. I know I did. I'm feeling a little more awake than before we started. Are you? Then again, maybe you watched this whole story time sitting on your couch under a blanket, maybe with a cup of milk and cuddly slippers on your feet, in which case I'm kind of jealous, but I enjoyed spending the time with you anyway. There's lots going on in the library. I hope you come in sometime soon and see. If you come in on a Wednesday around lunchtime, we've been having food trucks out front of the library with all different kinds of food. And we have some of our electronic toys and games you can play with while you're eating your lunch. But don't get food on the toys, okay? And come in and pick out some books and say hi. I even made a scavenger hunt here in Youth Services so you can use clues to look around and see if you can find some things that are hidden. Summer is halfway over now. Halfway over, can you believe it? To the end of our summer reading program. So keep reading and keep keeping track of those minutes. Maybe you'll win a prize. What do you think? All right, for now, here we go. Let's get a big stretch. Reach for the ceiling. Ooh, and touch the floor. Stand up again and do some more. Touch your head. And now your knees. Up to your shoulders. Like this, you see. Get a big stretch there too. Reach for the ceiling and touch the floor. That's all there is. There isn't any more. But I'll see you next time. Bye.